coming up on That's a Great Point.
Which is not to say that the data, the performance, the effectiveness, all those sort of um, qualities are unimportant. They're absolutely important. But to put them first and ignore the relationship is to create more chaos, more crisis, more problematic stuff. I mean,
You,
how efficient, how much more efficient do we have to become in order to finally get it right? I it just seems like we'll always
Mhm.
be needing to do more to get it right. So why not come back first of all to who are we and how do we relate to each other so that we can then do the work.
On today's episode of That's a Great Point, we have special guest Sam House. Sam is a truly amazing human being with a wide variety of experiences and achievements under his belt. Sam is a co-leader of the Coactive Coaching Institute's leadership program, a program designed for developing today's leaders. We discuss how our approach to delivering hard truths can make the difference and how our leadership is received. Sam is also a facilitator with the Braver Angels organization, an organization dedicated to political depolarization. Sam shares with us a little about how we can bridge the gap between ourselves and people we may not see eye to eye with. I've barely scratched the surface on the depth of today's conversation, for Sam is a wealth of wisdom. To find out more about Sam and his work, check out the links in our show description. If you find our content helpful, please share it with somebody you love. Thanks for playing along. Enjoy. Welcome to That's a Great Point, the attitude adjustment for your soul, where co-hosts Elena Doran, Michelle Albers, and Lee Smart discuss deep topics around a life well lived. Let's start the show. Say, that's one of the things I love about you is every time I talk to you, I hear about somewhere else that you've managed to go, something else you've managed to explore, and somewhere else you've lived. Like so many experiences. Um, you've told me you've done leadership retreats in Spain, and you came down to see me for a little while in your little mini RV, and uh, so I'm curious if you have like a favorite adventure that you've been on.
Are we recording now?
We are recording. It's
Oh, okay.
going.
We just drop right in and go.
Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you.
Welcome.
A favorite adventure, did you say? Well, the one
Yes.
that it's hard to find one, but the one I would point to right now is the one that found me pulling this little tiny trailer behind my Subaru and arriving at your doorstep, having met you only as a participant, not only, I don't mean to diminish you, but only having met with you and me online, with you as a participant in the course, when you said, well, if you're interested in coming down to the south, please know I'd love to, meet you. And so I took you seriously. And so, all right, I'm going to tie my little trailer onto the back of my car and take a 3-month little journey and include visiting Lee Smart on my journey in the South, the American South, something that, as an ignorant and arrogant Northerner, I was interested in addressing some of my own biases about the South. That sent me on that trip.
What might be some insights for us fellow? I mean, I adopted the North. I'm
Is
originally
that right?
I'm originally from Ukraine, but I think of myself.
Oh my
I've
God,
spent
thank you.
majority of my life in the Northeast, so I'm curious. After a 3-month journey, what are some takeaways that you might have for the snobby Northerners?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that all of us all of us in the world right now, actually, but specifically to the north, we could all just take a bit of a breath and learn. There's something about maybe being in warmer weather. I'm not sure, Lee, you can say confirm or not, but there's something about warmer weather that does allow for just a little bit of a slowing down. And I think we often operate at a frenetic pace up here in the north. And so that's an obvious early one. In a sort of a more significant way, a big part of this trip was to follow the battlefields of the American Civil War, and not only to learn about the what happened during that conflict itself, but to really look at what were the factors that led up to the Civil War, that occurred during the Civil War, and that occurred long after the Civil War. And what are the parallels between what happened then and what's happening in our country right now? And so um, the takeaway, one of the takeaways for me is that in some ways, it's very clear that we are in an unprecedented time in our country's history. Yes, and we've been in very similar unprecedented times like this. If you can hear a smoke alarm, I apologize. It's good. You can't good. Anyway, we've been in unprecedented times in our history before that parallel very closely to what we're doing in right now. And it was interesting to have a more of a historical context to understand what we're experiencing now and seeing that we've been here in other ways before.
Mhm. So it's almost like hope. Like we can do hard things. We can do tough.
Yeah, yeah, hope, and it sometimes it's hard to hold hope. I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes it is hard to hold hope. And you're right. The pendulum does swing. Whatever the swing is between one thing and another, um, where it has been swinging before, it it seems to me that it's kind of natural that it would swing in another direction. And so our country is in a state of, in a big, huge pendulum swing. And how long will it be there? I have no idea, but I clear that it will swing back again, you know. And that's not just a belief that I have about the politics of what's going on in our country, but I think that's so true of us individually, internally, interpersonally. That just happens, you know.
I love the idea that it's easier to appreciate the sunshine because of the rain. In any movie that we have, heroes exist because of villains. There's no
Yeah.
opportunity for a hero without a villain. So it's necessary to have these pendulum swings, like you're saying. Um, so you teach a course specifically to help opposing sides communicate, even when they want to butt
Yeah.
heads.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you're willing to share some about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's actually an organization called Braver Angels, and you may have heard about it or read about it elsewhere. But Braver Angels is a national organization that is dedicated to the the notion that where we disagree politically, in the case of Brave Angels, where we disagree politically, we do not have to lose connection and relationship to each other as well. And so the whole purpose of Brave Angels started in 2016 was to bring people who disagree significantly politically into the spaces and have them uh, be in conversation with each other without convincing each other that they're right. It's not about convincing the other side that they're right, but it's about uh, holding relationship above the disagreement. And in order to have that relationship, and this is the relationship above, this is the disagreement, to have that relationship be what sustains the ability to stay in the conversation of disagreement. And it feels so much now as though we've we've stayed in the disagreement, but we've lost the capacity to be in relationship with each other. And that to me is a just a huge problem that I think we're experiencing now. So Brave Angels does a lot of different workshops on of all different kinds about how do we come together and depolarize while also standing in our own unique perspectives. And that starts with one of their workshops is called Depolarizing Within. So it's all about noticing where I am polarized against someone or something else and notice what do I need to do within myself to soften that and release it a little bit so that I'm no longer holding this polarized uh, dualistic point of view, you know. And everything from that to moving into getting real people who disagree with each other to talk to each other and discover that they actually like each other, you know.
Oh,
So much to unpack there. I realized a long time ago that if I didn't like somebody, it would not last if I got to know them.
Amen.
As-
Yeah.
the defenses had to come down, but once the defenses were down, we actually really truthfully got to
Yeah.
know each other and realized that we're all human. We all share faults and mistakes and shortcomings, and um, it's just, oh man, it's such a better place to come from. Um, ladies, y'all
First
have
of all,
something?
it's so true. Sorry.
Hmm.
It's so true. And I think it's why I imagine you all are involved somehow in the human development world, coaching or something else. And I think it's why we became coaches, is to learn how do I soften something certainly within me, but how do I soften it within somebody else so that they can have a little more expansive view of what's possible in their life, you know. Uh, and by the way, you activated something else in my mind, Lee. Someone else attributes this to Abraham Lincoln, but he said something about when he met some man that he disagreed with. He said, "That man I vehemently disagree with. I must get to know him." I think that's what a what a what a cool thing to be drawn to the place where I'm disagreeing to somebody with somebody, you know.
it's so rampant, this division, not letting each other get a chance to see the humanity, the squishy human,
Yeah.
like that squishy, vulnerable human inside the shell. Whatever
Amen.
we wear, however we look, whatever titles we hide behind. And I
Yeah.
see it a lot, in the streets of New York City. You meet people every day, all the time, from all these different backgrounds. And one of the things that I do, I actually did this exercise yesterday myself, is when I sit on the subway in the midst of all the humanity and I find myself activated, triggered a little bit,
Yeah.
feeling a little bit of like confrontation, something brewing, I intentionally send love to everyone in the train car.
Mm.
Like I look at all the people, in particularly ones that I imagine I would disagree with.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you specifically, I am sending you a virtual hug and love, and I'm imagining you as a child,
Yes.
you as a
Yeah.
grown up, like you are like me in oh so many ways, and that helps the escalate. And that's it's one of the ways, right, that I try not to be a hypocrite.
One of the ways of not being trying not to be a hypocrite.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and while at the same time recognizing that, oh my God, do I judge people all the time?
of
And
course.
then, yeah, of course, right? And then how do I soften? How do I look with eyes of love as you're talking about, you know, but recognizing the judge in me that's always there, of course.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's not going anywhere.
No.
It helps us survive. There's good aspects of it. I'm wondering in the work that you're doing in depolarizing, what's the first way? What are the most basic ways of softening people that you practice in this work? You get into a
Boy.
room. I'm wondering, first of all, you get into a room, what are you walking into?
Yeah. Well, first of all, here's what's also true. If they've decided to come to the room, there is a part of them that's already wants something different, and
Hmm.
that's why they're there. This is not this work that Brave Angels does, and that I'm guessing that I do, and I imagine you all do your own version of it. Um, this work works when the other side has some degree of openness or receptivity to it, right? I mean, I have no illusions about um, convincing the most polarized person, whether they're on the left or the right or wherever they are, to that if they're locked there, they're not going to be interested in this kind of work right now. So, um, having said that, um, I'm just trying to think what having people tell their stories to each other, having people respond to a question that has them say out loud in front of other people something about themselves that has other people, when they hear it, they go, "Oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
That's a little different than what I thought." There's a question that I now use in my discovery session. It's called, "What is one uninteresting thing about yourself that people do not know?" You know, and and it's really a fascinating question to me because if I begin to identify, well, I don't know, I love to bake cookies. So you say that in front of a room full of people. Other cookie bakers may be kind of intrigued. Oh my God, I disagree with you on everything, but boy, do I love to also bake cookies, you know? So things that have people speak out loud that simply reveal the humanity that's there really is a great way to begin making that happen.
There's a statement: the Russians love their children too. It was born of the Cold War era.
Ooh,
I
yeah,
love it so much.
yeah, 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 yeah. If we can only, and that comes back to Alina, your notion of sitting in the subway and looking through eyes of love. When I can do that, I soften, and yeah,
For
I
sure.
love that you started internally, that you're like, we get in a room and we notice external and then we go internal before we like go back to external. I think that's
yeah,
a key point because I've found over time in conversations with people, and these are conversations I'm having with people that I've like literally earned trust with, like you earn trust in drops and you spill it in buckets. So I don't think this is
oh,
a conversation I can
yeah,
have with someone that is, charged and heated and they don't know me from anyone else. So I don't have any trust or rapport built or connection.
yeah,
But with people that I have that connection with, to sit with them when they're really charged and fearful about something, to come to that realization that that's it. It's fear is why I have these strong visceral reactions. And then my response, like I think the human reflex to fear is to attack or to protect.
yeah,
And when you can get out of that fear place and come to that place of, well, how would I show up in compassion for not only myself, but also for the other people in the room? What might that look like? And I think you have to get uncharged before you can go there.
yeah, yeah. That's great. Um, and that's an inside job, isn't it? I think
Yes.
that's what your point is. That's an inside
Yes.
job, right?
Yes. And to be in a room with people, like it sounds like your workshops, that it's a space where it starts like that. The room is holding that space to begin with, because people come in open-minded, they're looking for a change, they're looking for a shift, and they just need some expertise and some guidance and someone to mentor them and teach them, like, how do I do this different? Because my reflexes are so strong. I'm tired of
Yeah,
fear and
yeah,
anger.
yeah. There's that expression, the amygdala hijack, the part of the brain that gets hijacked into the fear, fight, or flight, or freeze response, right? And when that's activated, there's not much resourcefulness. But if we can, again, um, help that open up a little bit and reduce that fear level, amygdala is not hijacked, and there's more openness to do exactly what you're saying, and
Yeah.
that's an inside job. It's why practices that help us, whether it's things like breathing, meditation, yoga. I don't do yoga personally. I know I should, you know.
There's no should. There's no should.
You're right. Thank you, saboteur. But I know it would be good for me. Those are all great ways, of course, to reduce. But I also think that developing a more active practice of doing the kind of thing, again, Alina, that you talk about, or in my mind, another way, another entry point of that in is the act of forgiveness. And forgiveness, too, is to me always an inside job. It has nothing to do with the other person, except that they are an object for me to realize what am I hooked about, what am I attached about, and as I do that, I hold it, and it's the release of that in my mind lives under this term forgiveness. I'm forgiving. I actually I think I'm forgiving first of all myself for holding this clenched quality inside of me towards you. That's what I'm forgiving first. And as I do that, I forgive whatever it is that I think you've done to make my life more difficult or more miserable or whatever. And that is a heart opening action. It's a practice. It's not sort of like, oh, I waited for forgiveness to come to me, and when it did, I finally was able to let you go. No, it's how do I find a way to forgive here and here and now and now and now over and over and over again. Heart opening.
That's beautiful. And you're saving folks money on doctor bills for sure.
I think so. I
For
agree. Yeah.
sure. That has to be
Yeah.
a measurable metric
Yeah.
of, heart attack prevention, heart disease prevention, hypertension. I wonder what it would be like to measure that.
I wonder too. I'm sure there are people out there who are doing this kind of work that are looking into that question. I hope they are. But I'm not aware of it. Yeah.
It's that point of accessibility that I love that you're talking
Mm.
about, Sam. It's wherever you are, you can do that little tiny, smallest unit of measure.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about meditation, like brushing one's teeth and having one conscious breath as we brush our teeth.
Amen.
That's
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
meditative, right? And
Yeah.
a prayer to whatever one system of, meditation. It has meditative qualities.
It sure does.
Um,
It sure does. It sure does. I mean, what you make me think about, brushing your teeth or other little things. It makes me think of mirror neurons, which are that quality that when in an interaction, two people walking on the street together, one person gives a little wave of their hand, the other person will typically give the same wave of their hand. I've been practicing this a little bit when I walk my dog, and I give a closed mouth, tight lipped smile like that. And I get back so often the same exact facial expression, you know. And so the idea that through these little gestures, I can actually create something out there that I want to have mirrored back into the world, not just to me, but into the world. They're small, but they're meaningful.
You just reminded me of when we first met. So you came in as a substitute, as a front of the room leader in the
Yeah,
coaching course, and you came in and you just had this big old grin on your face with that chuckle that just I love that chuckle of yours. And I couldn't help but think, like, man, is this guy for real? There's no way that somebody could be that amused, that happy. And then the more I've gotten to know you, the more that is exactly who you are. So I'm actually curious. Have you always had kind of that that happy smile on your face, or is that a result of some of the work that you've done?
I have no idea. And 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 if you were to ask my spouse, my wife, Heather, she might say, gee whiz, can you bring a little more of that around here? You
Oh,
know, a little bit of that chuckle or smile.
hmm.
And I don't know about the rest of you, but in long-term relationships, those are some of the, we show more sides of ourselves than ever, and they get some of the worst of us too. And I'm still working on how do I bring what feels natural to me that you're describing into other important ongoing aspects of my life, like my relationship with my spouse. Um, But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the source of that is. Uh, I'm one of five kids, and I just remember sitting around the dinner table as a kid, and there would always be something stimulating happening at dinner time, and it was not necessarily always fun or funny or joyful, but it was very lively. And it was that liveliness that it feels has infused me and also my siblings as well. Uh, I don't know. And I don't know. I have a rather hopeful perspective on life,
Hmm.
despite sometimes what it looks like when we look around. Uh, if you have any insights into this, though, please let me know because I'd be
I think
curious.
it's telling that that's my experience of you, and just it's probably a really good indicator how much you still love doing the work that you do.
Mm, yeah, yeah, very much so. A word that I have a hard time understanding at a sort of a visceral level because I'm old enough to retire now, and I just something happens inside of me when I think about the word retire. Not like I want to work my rear end off at intense levels, but I always want to be involved in doing some version of the work that I know I'm doing, and I'll bet you three are doing as well,
Hmm?
and I bet you want that. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
do you look forward to a day when you can say, you know what, I'm 65 or 68 or whatever age you are, and you say, I can hardly wait to just stop doing all of this engagement with the human condition and live on the edge of a golf course, you know?
Absolutely not.
This
Absolutely not. I want to do the work that I do. So, what has led you to find the work that you do, the coaching, the facilitation, the groups?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's for me personally, it's been a part of my life from the beginning. The
Mm,
middle child of five, often people at war with each other, feeling the need to help pacify the conflict in the family system, but also being finding myself endlessly interested in what happens when the different sides can come together. So I can see childhood, what is it, antecedents to this desire. And then, I'll never forget my mom at one phase of her career became a family systems therapist. And she invited me and other kids as well, but I remember I was the one who went to go to where she was doing her work with families and to sit behind a one-way mirror and with the family's permission to have me there, um, observe the unfolding chaos in the family and the work that my mom and a co-therapist were doing with that family and the family system. And that was that was so impactful for me. And so it actually influenced me to, first of all, become a therapist and a family therapist for many years before switching over to doing coaching and leadership development work. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think, well, CTI even has this one, CTI, the organization that we're all familiar with in case someone's watching this podcast. It's the training organization that we're all have been a part of. CTI has a very simple statement: relationship before task, being before doing. And to me, um, the notion that the four of us on this call, can be engaged in helping our human friends understand that before they ever did anything, they already existed in the form of being. And relationship lives in the realm of being. And so bringing our clients, our family members, our friends, or whatever, back to awareness that hold it. Before we did anything together, we were in a relationship with each other. How do we recover back to that? And to me, that's where the healing needs to be in our on the planet nowadays.
Hmm.
Solving a lot. Saving Thanksgiving dinners, saving a company performance.
Amen. Oh, performance. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I know that when they hire people like us to go into organizations, their interest is in improving performance, And
And
go ahead, finish my thought. What were you going to say?
and detox and
Detox.
self-awareness and take a look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the pointing fingers, it's de-escalating, and
Yeah.
awareness will solve a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Pointing to data and making decisions from data instead
Yeah.
of using intuition, common sense,
Yeah.
observation.
Yeah. Which is not to say that the data, the performance, the effectiveness, all those sort of um, qualities are unimportant. They're absolutely important. But to put them first and ignore the relationship is to create more chaos, more crisis, more problematic stuff.
So
I mean,
you,
how efficient, how much more efficient do we have to become in order to finally get it right? I it just seems like we'll always
Mhm.
be needing to do more to get it right. So why not come back first of all to who are we and how do we relate to each other so that we can then do the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of the it's a snowball effect, right? It's a spiral, and it can be an
Yeah,
upward spiral or a downward spiral.
or
You
that
could like
way.
we
Yeah,
get to choose the direction. It doesn't have to go
yeah,
down.
yeah,
It can
yeah,
be a beautiful cycle.
yeah,
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 there's
yeah.
a risk of people being felt as if they're cogs in a machine,
Mm,
and that absolutely just you want to stop engagement, break engagement with employees, treat them like a cog in a machine, and they'll
yeah,
they'll quit on you very quietly. You said you mentioned something about being and doing. I'm actually curious if you can expand more on your take on being versus doing.
yeah. Um, well, the first thing that comes to mind is the misnomer when people say, uh, "So, what do you do?" And the response is, I am whatever, a doctor, a mechanic, a janitor, a teacher. I am this. Um, and so, I mean, the story about, uh, you know, people who spend their focus on working and having their identity wrapped up in what they do reach a place where they stop doing that, retirement or whatever, and then they're dead within 6 months to a year after having stopped. And I'm sure there are probably studies that look at this too, but I'm unaware of them. But intuitively, it feels as though um, one of the factors that is involved in that early onset of death is the failure to realize that there's more to my life than what I was doing. So um, I would love, like, I've begun even getting myself to remember to say, well, what do you do? And to say something like, either I have a coaching practice, not a coaching business, or I work as a coach rather than I am a coach. Um, because I want to not myself fall into that trap of identifying what I do with who I am. So um, the the sort of your question, what's the distinction or something about being and doing. I it seems to me that we take this quality of our human existence, our human being, so for granted that we no longer understand that that's what we are, because what's visible is what we end up doing. The picking up something and moving it here, engaging in a project and bringing it to completion. Those are all the visible, easily identifiable experiences that we engage in all the time. So we begin to identify more with that doing quality of life rather than, again, it's that inward journey, that inward awareness of who am I? And as I become aware of that, who are you? And I don't know, there's something about returning to what came first in the first place, that sense of who am I? Who are we? What are we? Before we look at what are we going to do here? Feels important, you know. And as coaches, by the way, I think that it's so easy to get sucked into coaching our clients around what they want to do. And because we're, what are we doing? We're practicing joining with them. So client comes with, I have an issue, something I want to work on. It's about how do I do more to become more effective at this? And we want to have them feel that they are met. So we meet them at the place of joining with them in that place of their wanting to do something. But then our job is to not stay there. Our job is to back it up and begin to look at who are they and get them to do that work so that we can then begin to look at what are they going to do. And I think oftentimes we fall into the trap of getting sucked into the doing component of their lives so much so that we forget that more essential being part. I'm sure none of you fall into that trap. I know I have
Never,
fallen into that trap
never. We're
myself.
we're above that.
Yeah.
Never. We don't do that human thing. Well, I love that actually I have it's funny. I have the octopus in the back because it is that
Yeah, I
example
see that.
of like you start with whatever the client comes with problems as they see them, and that's what you start with. You
Yeah,
start there.
yeah.
But then quickly after, you realize that you're at the end of one of the tentacles and there's like seven more, and the head is like all the way back there.
Yeah.
So, very much to your point, once you've surveyed the whole animal,
Yeah,
the initial problems become a moot point. We're somewhere
yeah,
else now.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's not that you needed to do more of that you initially came with. It's that you weren't being this other thing that you're wanting to unearth, and that's like knocking and wanting to emerge.
absolutely. And that takes courage on our part, it feels to me, to join with them first and then steer them away from that too. So I think there's a level of courage that is involved in us taking a stand for that with our clients in a compassionate way that has them know that we're not letting go of what they said they wanted to work on, but we're also not buying the the BS that that's the only thing that's going on. And I hope you use that octopus as a metaphor in your work with with clients. It's a beautiful metaphor.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you
I
loaded up, Michelle.
I am
uh,
loaded up. I'm pulling so many amazing things from this conversation. And one is I'm not affiliated with CTI at all. I've never taken a course. I
Oh,
didn't know anything about,
fantastic.
but what I'm learning and hearing is even though my living traditions that I studied within are completely different, we're all coming from similar heart spaces and like, ways to connect with other beings. I'll say it that way
Yeah,
based on this conversation.
yeah,
The other thing I really pulled from what you were talking about doing it right, and I was just like, yeah, doing it right might be a thing, but there is no such thing as being right. It just is. Like we are beings and we get to be, and when we do, it gets messy because we think there's a right way. But the
yeah.
reality is if you're doing it from your being, then it's always right because it's you, and that's so flippin' beautiful.
It is. And my apologies for assuming that you were part of this CTI world because
No, it's okay. It's
we,
beautiful. I love that. I
okay.
love that you said it because it brought me to that
Yeah.
place of it's like here we are having a conversation. We're all on very much the same, well, I was gonna say page, but maybe we're just all in the same heart.
Yeah.
You know? And it just feels so it's lovely that we can study different ways, different methods, different, different places. And here's where I come to this. And because I believe my training was really beautiful, good,
Yeah. Yeah.
intentional training. If you study in a place where it's good, intentional training, and good maybe isn't a great word, just
Yeah.
incredible, real, authentic for your best and highest good trainings, it's not that different. It's like how you get there can be a smidgy different, but really we're all going to the same end goal. And I think that same end goal, at least for me, if I just want to really simplify it, what are you? Love. We're going to love and
Mm.
compassion. And I think when we're in our being, that opens the door for connection and love and community. And when we're in our doing, it gets really selfish really quick sometimes. And I think,
Yeah.
and selfish is a great word when it's coming from healing, but when it's selfish is from that ego, I have to protect myself and I'm living in fear place, it's a totally different way we show up. And it gets really messy really fast. And to have rooms like
Mm.
yours where you can hold space and say, let's be and talk and listen and actually hear each other. Like we're active listening, we're communicating, we're not just in our own fearful state of protection and like fear. It changes everything. And to invite people into a room and have people brave enough to enter a room like that, because that's different than how
It
I used to show
is.
up. Maybe I won't lump everybody in there, but I used to show up very much fearful and protective because I didn't want to be hurt again. I didn't want to find my pain again. I was over it. I just wanted to be able to trust again. And it's
Yeah.
like so hard, but you open up to rooms like yours and it's like, yeah, welcome. Come on in. We're going to play.
Yeah, yeah, and play is important, right? And the other thing you said that I just loved is what was it? You said doing it right or something like that
Mm.
earlier on. And it's so interesting because I had a teacher who was very helpful for me in this, that in an understanding that everything always is an experiment. There's no, there's never getting it quote right because we've never done it before. I don't care how many times I wake up in the morning and put on my clothes and brush my teeth or whatever. This is the first time I've done that now. And I know that sounds simplistic, but to think that everything is always an experiment rather than have some preconceived idea of what it's supposed to be and be disappointed that you didn't get it right according to that preconceived idea. And when you do, it's sort of like, so what? Now you've achieved it, and now what? There's nothing left. But if everything is an ongoing experiment, where we are in, we're sort of we're required to be present in this moment as the experiment that we're participating in unfolds, because the expectation that we would otherwise be having about how it's supposed to look is running us instead. And when we're with the expectation that it's supposed to be that way, we're no longer present because we're already tuned out.
Hmm.
So I so appreciate your words about doing it right.
Yeah.
Mm.
When you were saying that, all I could think is you can't step in the same river twice.
Right.
And if you have an
Yeah,
expectation that the world is never changing and you don't realize and recognize that it's ever changing, every breath is a different moment,
it
then
is.
living in a world expecting it never to change is an exhausting life. And it creates so much fear when you learn to go with the flow and realize that every time you step in the river, it's different water, and everything has changed. I mean, when you say it that way, it sounds a little bit like terrifying and overwhelming. But the reality is trust yourself to step in that river and navigate it as it is in that moment, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's why, I mean, our clients, I believe, hire us to help them. They may not know this when they hire us,
Mm.
but they think they're hiring us sometimes to help them be better at achieving the expectations that they have in front of them. And we're helping them understand, just stay present with where you are and make it an experiment, and then see what unfolds. Um,
There's so much grace
yeah,
in that.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
That is beautiful. That granting permission. Sam, I'm listening to you talk so elegantly about the human condition. And then there's a part of me, maybe that's the child, that's wondering about like top 10 stories of if these walls could talk, the kinds of things that you've seen happen in rooms. That's where I've been going in my head
Hmm.
as a child.
Can you say a little bit more about like even what the fantasy is about that? I mean, or what, wait, a
Well,
little shape around it, if
But
you
Lee
would.
I
wants
had I
to
had a very
say
very
something.
similar thought. The way I was going to word it was, are you willing to share any significant transformational moments that you've either experienced or witnessed?
Like personally, in a room, as Helena was
Uh,
saying, right? Okay. Because I
to
think we are in a transformational moment in our country in the United States right now. But uh, we'll leave that one. Um, well, let's see. I mean, here's an example of one. It's not a specific memory of one, but here's an example of one that I'm sure has happened before. Is in a leadership program that involved with over 4 retreats over 10 long months. Um, the conversations with our participants can get very, very intense at times. And because what they're doing is they're having experiences and really un unpacking aspects of themselves that they thought were solid and in place and needed to stay there. And those are getting kind of broken open and something new is emerging. Well, in the course of that, if I'm sort of helping guide that process, I may say something that I think is going to be really, really helpful, and it's taken by them to be incredibly offensive or difficult for them to absorb. And they begin to um, go kind of, I don't know, angry, upset, a little crazy around it. And so um, the in terms of this transformational moments, I can't tell you how many times the recovery in the room has been related to um, rather than trying to control or defend what I was doing for them to help them get to whatever place they I was hoping they could get to. Instead of controlling or defending my actions, to instead um, take responsibility for creating the mess. Uh, take responsibility, apologizing. Uh, when another one of my teachers said, "Our job is to do what dogs do when they come together: come in low." One dog meeting the other dog comes in low to demonstrate that they're not a threat. And so in the earlier moment that I'm kind of referring to that set this person off, I might have inadvertently and unconsciously been really driving to bring this person to greater awareness, and and it fired them up, fired them off, ticked them off, and so to come in low is to do whatever is necessary to have them know that I'm on their side, and what's amazing, and to be completely open and vulnerable myself. So it's not uncommon for me to shed a lot of tears in the course of wanting to serve them in what they're up to. And there's something about the transformational moment is often when the individual and the group understands that I'm not on the attack, but that I'm only seeking to evoke their greatness, and it didn't work. And to then come in low and open-hearted, uh, what it does oftentimes is not as a strategy or as a technique, but just what unfolds is they begin to go, oh, what I was defending against, I don't need to defend against because you're not a threat. And when you're not a threat, I can begin to look at the thing that you were addressing with me at this level. And now I begin to soften and something opens up. Maybe a lot of tears or a lot of frustration or a lot of hurt or a lot of remembering of something that happened in the past and the beginning of healing that. Um, those that's an example of something that sort of is feels like transformational. And it's not just transformational for the individual, it's absolutely transformational for me, and it's transformational for everybody in the room who oftentimes is finds themselves in weeping as well as they discover the truth of what's going on with that individual or with me. They discover the truth of how that's also true for them as well. And so I don't know. The Just one other thing about this is being willing to be at full permission in service of another human being, full permission to come in low and humble, and full permission to be excuse me, a steamroller if necessary, and then take responsibility for that and then adjust accordingly. To me, the whole range of the human experience meeting itself is where transformation takes place often. Not like a requirement, but it's a good indication that transformation begins to occur in situations like that. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but it's what I thought of.
So the fuck word is absolutely welcome here. I'll say that out loud. And I love that you've had these moments so often that to think of one specific moment is difficult. Um, and there's so I'm in leadership now. I've only been through retreat number one out of four, and your brother is leading it. And there is this saying amongst the group, said, "Fuck you, Pat." It's like it's almost like sing song. Fuck you, Pat. Fuck you, Pat. No, there's because of you know we're not allowed to rest in our safety. We're being pushed to grow in such a way that is phenomenal, in a way that I've never had the opportunity to experience before, and
Yeah.
it's absolutely wonderful. Um,
I don't think that what I've just described and what you've been talking about as well is available to us in every context of our lives, though. I mean, I think we have to be mindful of the impact that we're creating always
mm,
on our world.
yeah.
But I think where we as humans often uh, err, make an error, is we become so concerned about our impact that we get very small and in a small box in our relationship with others, whether it's as coaches or with our family members or whatever. And so the courage to not be caught in that box of not wanting to make an impact at all
Mhm.
is a very, very claustrophobic box to be in, and it doesn't serve. And so, how do we give ourselves more permission for our full range while also being always responsible for the impact that we have? Always responsible for the impact that we have, and that's a big conversation, I think. You know,
Yeah, for me, it was on the other end of the spectrum in that I would create the impact and create the mess. And if they couldn't handle it, it was their fault, not
yeah,
mine. Right.
yeah,
And I've
yeah.
very
You can
much so
see the
learned, yeah, learned to try and take responsibility for my end of what I've managed to create.
this to me is what being impactful as a human being, effective as a leader is all about. is understanding the full scope and limit of what responsibility means,
Mm, mm.
rather than saying, well, I did my part. Now, whatever didn't work, that's on you. That just doesn't get us very far.
It does. I think it gets us far. I would disagree.
Tell me more.
I think it gets us far just in the bad direction.
Oh, down
It
the
gets us
spiral.
pretty, yeah, it's the downward spiral of, making like, well, listen, I intended that whatever you understood is on you.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
you do you, I'm over here.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like I'm just gonna spout things and you interpreting them, that's in your house.
yeah. And what where I think I know I've gotten confused in the past, and I think many of us do, is taking responsibility does not mean I need to be codependent in making sure that you are always okay. So if I do something that um, is hard for you or offensive for you, um, you know, taking responsibility does not mean that I then shrink myself and say I'm the bad one here only, and you don't have any responsibility here. I mean, responsibility means that we all have responsibility all the time. You know,
And that's
um,
that's such an important part of modeling as a leader. When we do say the thing that has ripple effect that we didn't want,
yeah,
like
yeah,
to step in the ring and say the thing that is humbling.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And we don't have many role models out there in our world showing us the truth of that.
We
Yeah,
don't, and which makes it so special when they are there, when they
yeah,
do show up, and I want to say the loyalty, the care, how much
mm,
further people are willing to go with a leader like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not, you can only buy so many, raises and bonuses.
Yeah, transactionally, right? Rather
Mhm.
than transformationally, right? And that's the distinction that you're pointing to, seems to
Absolutely.
me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sounds like you have the transformational time that our country is going through top of mind. Care to expand on that a little bit?
Oh boy, how do I do this in a polite way?
Did it open up a can of worms that's going to be hard to close here in a polite way? Oh.
um, I don't know. I don't know where we're going, and I fear. I mean, this is just uh, pure political bias, but I fear that where we're going is away from what are the principles that our country was founded on. I fear that we're going away from that, and I appreciate that there is a desire to calibrate from where we've been and clean up some aspects of where we've been that carry corruption and fraud and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse is what's often said. Man, I got no problem with that at all. And but my heart breaks every morning when I see what other group of people were unceremoniously dismissed and fired and sent away either as workers in our government or sent away as people who were not even I don't mean to get too political here, but people who were not even um, accused of a crime and were sent to another country, you know, and with no accusation and no yeah, and they were citizens or they were permanent residents. I don't understand the mindset that says it's okay to treat human beings in this kind of way, you know. So,
Actually, what you just said there has me wondering. Like, I'll use COVID as an analogy. Whenever COVID locked us down. It gave us an
Yeah.
appreciation for what we were missing, and that's community.
Yeah.
Communities started popping up virtually, and then now people have a greater appreciation for community because we had that chance to be isolated.
Yeah.
And then I'm wondering
Yeah.
if that is exactly what needs to happen now, like to go through the rough times, to go through the bad times, to give us an appreciation for what it is that we don't want, because that allows the opportunity for change and for growth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it comes back to the pendulum, right?
Hmm.
The swing over here, it so invites the calibration that then is needed to
Hmm.
swing in another direction, right? Yeah. Boy, wise words. Yeah,
The rain makes the plants grow, right?
yeah. And we need it all. Do we need it all to the degree that we currently are
it's
having it?
it's flooding.
That's a bigger
it's
question, you know.
it's flooding. That's for sure.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I,
Yeah, well, I have a question that I ask
yeah,
people often is like, would you want your children to act like our leadership? And typically the answer is no, like
yeah,
absolutely not.
yeah, yeah. And the answer is no.
Every time, almost every time asked that question, that was the answer that I received was, I would
Mm.
absolutely not want my children to act like our leadership for this country.
It's so interesting because I think it's complicated though, because um, I think we have a media culture and a social media culture
Mhm.
that A wants to simplify things and put people into boxes, and we have a leadership class that understands that they have to say things in a way that it can be placed into a box because there is only so much tolerance for nuance and complexity in conversation. And so it's like this nonverbal agreement between our media and our leaders to offer language in simplistic and polarizing ways because that can be easily digested. And doing so then creates an impact that has all of us say, I would never want to be like that leader, you know.
Mhm.
So it's an interesting co-creation that
Mhm.
happens here, you know. The other thing is that you mentioned about COVID. I'm so glad you brought it up, and the sense that it brought us together, albeit in this format, this electronic format that the four of us are on right now, to create a sense of community and connection because the in-person stuff during COVID was not possible. My great worry is that this has become so convenient that we think this is the same as if we were in a room together physically, energetically. Um, and it's not. It is still, it's good. I'm glad we have it. But may this never be a replacement for what brings people together in person with each other. And I'm really, really concerned that COVID has trained us to accept this as a as an equivalent substitute for what it meant when we could be together, in person. Something happens in person that is unspoken, it's unseen, and yet it is extremely powerful. It's in the energetic field that we create as humans. And I may we learn that that's important. May we figure out that that's important, you know?
Oh, goodness. There's
Amen,
so
brother Sam. Amen.
so much in this conversation here. Um, on the politics piece that Sam, you and Lee are talking about, I'm thinking about sound bites will get you eyeballs,
Mm,
um, and nuance is not getting anybody ratings, and pointing
yeah,
out commonalities is not interesting to viewers.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
that won't get the results. The result is if you just demonize each other,
yeah,
and keep that up and keep right upping the ante and raising the temperature because That's interesting. It's like, watching a fight on the street.
It is. It
People being
is.
nice to each other is not going to get people to stop and look and record each other.
Yeah.
It's the fight that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And regarding I'm thinking about return to office as you're talking about the
Mm. Yeah.
criticality of. I think a lot of us understand with friendships, with non-work related, together it has something that we can never replace,
Online. You
right?
mean? Yeah.
And this podcast would never have been possible without this technology, because the three of us, right, Michelle, Lee, and myself, we're in three different locations across the country, and you are our guest as on our in our fourth. But what's been happening, and I imagine you've been seeing this in so many of your clients, is folks, especially who were in the pandemic, in COVID, lockdowns, isolation, in their more formative earlier career years or college years, didn't have a chance to experience what picking up body language is like, what sitting next to somebody who has 20 years of experience on you is like, someone who
Yeah.
does something better than you know how to do because you haven't done it.
Yeah.
And so that modeling, all those cues and all the in between value adds that happen human to human just aren't possible when you live in a scheduled 30, 45-minute slot world of Zoom.
Amen.
I'm wondering how much of that impact you're seeing in the clients that you have.
All of whom talk to me on Zoom.
That's great.
Yeah, boy. I mean, I don't have a good, I don't have a helpful response to that beautiful question, because of the convenience of this and our evolution and movement towards a format like this. It is reasonable. It makes sense. It's good. S- um, and the idea that there are limitations associated with it, and can we become aware enough of the limitations to actually motivate ourselves to leave the house, or go down the hallway, or whatever it is, to have a human to human, in person kind of connection with each other. Will we have enough motivation to do that? Is a huge question for me, and um, I mean, you mentioned the going back to work in person, and I know there's a movement to get people back to work, and I both appreciate the resistance of people to doing that, because they were actually plenty effective when they were not having to, commute into work. So I appreciate that. And I also appreciate that something magical happens when bodies are in the same space together and doing things together. So I don't know what the answer is. I think there's a both and here. We
Mhm.
have to be insistent on being face to face with each other. And we have to be reasonable about the value and the gift of the blessing of this kind of an electronic format too. And there's a level of internal discipline, or internal will, that's required. My will to make person to person connection happen. My will to maintain the electronic connections happen.
Mhm.
That's, yeah.
It very much feels like a both.
Yeah.
It is not
Yeah.
a singular answer.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I really feel it. That's the future, and companies that kind of clamp down, the law in this economy, when employees have less choice,
Yeah.
there's probably going to be a backlash when the economy's in a better place.
Yeah.
They're
I
going
would
to
think so.
People will remember how they're treated, that they were promised that it's okay to make that move across the country and that they're safe. And now they have to uproot their families to move to the office. I absolutely see the value in both. And I think there is a way, absolutely, there's a way to make it work.
Yeah.
differentiate, and blanket rules seem harmful.
Yeah. 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 I mean, and we're not even yet talking about the carbon footprint of committing to being always in person. That raises a big, huge carbon imprint, and so how do we offset that? Uh, we meet electronically, and that's very, very beneficial. I mean, yeah,
Absolutely. I mean,
it's
or
a,
we can just like move into our offices.
that's right. And then we then say, I am my work,
I am. That's right. Then they know I am and I do.
Yeah.
It's just one.
Yeah. It's just one. It
I'm
comes
just
together
here.
like this.
That's right.
Get a feeding tube and a chair we don't have to get off of, and we're
Right.
good to go.
That's right. There's no need for you. We've got the best lunch perks you have ever seen. Forget ping pong tables. You
Oh
get
yeah,
eating
yeah.
tube.
Yeah, feeding tube.
Lee, I like that idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm imagining like a little
Yeah.
girl in a
Did you ever
cage.
see the animated movie Wall-E?
Love it.
Wall-E? Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there's that emblazoned in my mind is that image of all those people who have everything they want. They're in these floating chambers where they're so
Oh,
big, and they
yes.
don't have to walk anymore, and they have feeding tubes,
Yes.
and their entertainment, and there's nothing they have to do or push against to make
Hmm.
life work for them.
Yes. They're just atrophied.
Yeah, they're completely atrophied. Yeah, yeah, and unhappy. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So resistance and toughness is
Essential.
included.
It's part of it, right? We need it. Yeah, we need it as much as we want to make everything convenient.
Yeah. You said toughness, and it made me think of what you were saying earlier, Sam, about you mentioned it a few times, softening to allow for relationships.
Yeah.
And, I spend a lot of time in men's circles. It's amazing how often softening gets conflated with weakness.
Oh, isn't that
And,
true?
and it's actually a place of infinitely greater strength to soften. It's
Yeah.
actually harder to soften. It's harder to be in relationship first than it is to be the tough guy who's unfazed, who's unbothered, who's emotionally absent. That's actually easy compared to softening and being in relationship.
It is. It is. Yeah. And I mean, again, if you think about that amygdala hijack again, we can so easily enter into a state of reactivity, you know. And when we are reactive, we're hard, you know. And men, I mean, this is not to disparage the challenges that women who have very similar, when they have very similar experiences of men, absolutely. But men, oh my God, the 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 burden on men to become awake,
Hmm.
you know, so that they may learn about softening, they may learn about being, they may learn about relationship, they may learn about, what's the expression? To go fast, go alone, to go far, go together, something like that. You know, men, we're just horrible at it as a species. Um, I'm glad you're doing that work.
Yep. Thanks to you. Like we haven't spent a lot of time together, but I just want to let you know that the short amount of time we have spent together has significantly changed the trajectory of my life and for the
Mm,
better. And uh, as so, I thank you so much for being you
mm,
and being who you are and doing the work that you do because it is having impacts even in the in little bitty small amounts of time with you is
mm,
amazing.
mm. Well, thank you, and mirrors back to you. Yeah. Sorry,
So,
I don't mean to turn this into a boy love fest, leaving out you two.
It didn't feel
No,
like that.
I'm
Didn't
loving
feel like
this.
that at all. It felt like a whole lot of gratitude.
Beautiful. There's love in the room, in this virtual Zoom room. There's very real love and softening.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you've been a little bit quiet, Michelle. Anything you want to add before we shut it
Oh,
down?
it would start a whole nother podcast.
Hmm.
No, we're good.
We'll
It
have to
would
have a
start
whole
whole nother
episode on
podcast.
the Sam episode review then, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's just there's just so many avenues we can go down when we talk about this sort of thing. And I don't know if we're doing 3 points. If we are, there's one thing I'm chewing on that can be part of can just be that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we hadn't planned on doing any kind of 3 points today. It was
Oh, okay. That's
uh,
cool. I mean, I can throw this out there and try not to make it go down a whole lane of things. Um, if you're open to
Good
that,
luck.
do we have time for
Good
that?
luck.
I know, right? It's like when you have these four people in a room, good luck not going down different lanes of ways we can talk about things. But I just think when you talked about the COVID thing, Lee, and talked about how it made people realize they miss community, yes, and I have people in my life where it didn't do that for them. It deepened their anxiety and made it harder for them to go out into the world. And now they're stuck in this fear space of, I don't remember how to connect and I don't know how to ask for help with that. And so there's this other, I don't even want to say side because I think sides are the problem. I think there's another perspective. And I think, it's why it's so important that we do our internal work so that we can hold space and so that we can be aware and open our eyes and see. And so it's like, yes, do your internal work and then look up and look around and look out and seek others that you might be drawn to you or you might be drawn to, and then ask them, invite them, give them an invitation to ask for help or give them an invitation to lean into something that might support them when they don't really know what they need, but they've been stuck in fear and isolation for so long and it's become their comfort zone, even though they know it's to their own detriment. And I just think there's so many perspectives. And I sometimes get in that place of like, I feel really passionately about how this affected me, but I forget that there's other perspectives. And I make assumptions about how other people relate to it. And it's so important to be able to like do your internal work and hold that safe space for yourself. So then you can look up and look around and go, how can I serve? How can I serve the people in my life or just the people who come upon me? Because I don't believe in coincidence. So I believe if somebody comes to me and says something that makes me go, oh, and take a breath, like one of those
Yeah.
breaths where it's almost a gasp. It's like, well, now I got to sigh it out and ask, what does this mean and how can I serve? And
Mm-mm.
I think it's so important to consider that we don't know how things affect other people. And I believe with all my heart, because I'm this person sometimes, that many, many, many of us, the human condition sometimes is that we don't know how or want to ask for help because it's soft, it's vulnerable, it opens us up to wound or pain, and we don't want to go there again. So I just think the more of us that can find a way to look someone in the eye and ask what they need or offer it in a way that doesn't even feel like they're asking for help, it's a beautiful thing, but it's a skill that's like developed over time.
Right. Amen. Um, yeah. And the whole asking for help thing is a huge, um, it is one of those deeper things that we could go down. It's like,
Yeah.
what is so, and you did such a great job of stopping. Um,
Tried. It was hard.
yeah, but how do we learn to not do it alone and not to be alone and to reach out, whether it's reaching out for asking for help or reaching out for asking for connection or anything else. Yeah, hugely important. I know that for me, I don't know if you guys have experienced this. I get so used to this kind of a format that I find myself more reluctant to reach out and connect with friends face to face and people face to face. And I have to, you know, put more effort into that. And it speaks to some of what I think you were talking about, Michelle. So, yeah, how do we appreciate
Yeah.
the restrictive quality of this too? Yeah.
So that was part one, part two to come.
Hmm.
What a beautiful time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody want to add anything else before we wrap it up?
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate this time together. I love having people in a room, even if it's a Zoom room.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love having people who are open to having deep, connected conversations, even when we're all in different states. States both internally and
Yes, right.
world.
States and states. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I just want to say thank you, the three of you, for opening the possibility for rich conversation. I mean, may we all seek more of that and engage in more of that in our lives and not just keep it at the surface, you know.
Amen.
Sam, it has been a pleasure, and I am going to hit the button. You're
Hang
welcome
on.
to.
Well, can we ask, like, Sam, how do we find you? Can you give us more information about that? I feel like that should be here
Oh,
that we can.
yeah. I mean, you can. I have a website. It's called solutionsleadership.com. It's SOULUTIONO. Soul and then Lucians, like solutions, but with a. Anyway, you get it.
Solutions
.com.
with a soul.
Right, right. So that describes sort of what I'm up to in the world, and you can reach me and contact me there. Yeah,
Beautiful. Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Now let's hit the button. How's that?
All right. Thank you for listening to That's a Great Point with Elena Doran, Michelle Albers, and Lee Smart. To find out more about how we can serve you, check out our links in the show description. Thanks for playing along.